Mayor Kate Gallego. She never set out to be a politician. Gallego thought she'd be a tech entrepreneur, but she's always loved Phoenix, her adopted hometown, believing the city could dream bigger. Today, she's leading Phoenix's tech boom with record semiconductor investment, driverless cars hitting the streets, and a new wave of growth, all while navigating motherhood and loss. Her personal experience inspiring her leadership through turbulent times. A 2025 CNBC Changemaker, Mayor Kate Gallego is in the Changemakers and Power Players spotlight.
Mayor Gallego, thank you so much for joining me on Changemakers and Power Players. I last saw you at the CNBC CEO Summit right outside Phoenix. And I feel like you were the star of that show. Everyone was so excited to talk to you about what you had accomplished. And I actually met you just a couple months before that at our Changemaker Summit in Los Angeles. You spoke on stage about everything you've accomplished for the city. And afterwards, I got this flood of texts. Dozens of women in the audience were like, oh my God, Mayor Gallego is incredible. And I can't wait to see what she does with the rest of her career. So it seems like you're just in the early days of what's sure to be a long political or business career. Though certainly in your third mayoral term right now, still have plenty to do left with the city. But just you just blew our audience away with your insight, your humanity, and your really incredible story of what led you into public service. So thank you so much for being here.
I am so pleased to join the podcast. Thank you.
So let's start with what led you to decide to run for mayor. It's a very personal story. You didn't have grand political ambitions. What brought you here?
Well, I originally got an MBA and I was hoping to be a clean tech entrepreneur. I got involved with the city volunteering with the Environmental Quality Commission. I worked on the city's solar energy plan, among other things, as a volunteer. I had a bunch of MBA student loan debt, and I was definitely not on the track for public service, but I really fell in love with the city. And I also felt like Phoenix maybe could aim a little bit higher. We were the 6th largest city in the country at the time. Now we are the 5th largest. But sometimes we didn't go after the big game-changing deals, and we were trying to attract call centers or back office jobs that weren't maybe the greatest year-round employment. So it was a little bit complaining. I was working in economic development. So if you know people in that line of work, people do sometimes complain. And eventually my friends told me I should either stop complaining and do something about it or just move on. And I obviously decided to run for office and served on the city council, elected twice there. So I started this crazy career path in my 20s and then ended up wanting to run for mayor, but it came at a really difficult time in my personal life. I went through a divorce. My mom was diagnosed with cancer and I was pregnant all at the same time. So originally thought that this maybe was not possible for me, just too much going on personally. At the time I was making the decision, none of the 15 largest cities in the country had a single female mayor, and I had never lived in a city with a female mayor. So when I think about what a mayor looks like, I think of a tall man with like great puffy hair and not a short young woman. So it was a bumpy ride for me at the start.
So all signs pointed to how running for mayor would be challenging. You're dealing with your mother's diagnosis, your marriage falling apart, and you're pregnant at the time. How did you go from looking at those challenges to saying, okay, I'm still going to run for mayor?
So I gave birth to my son, and I got through that terrible early time when you just like don't sleep at all. I realized then that people were not as focused on my personal life as I was. Like I was living in my own bubble where everyone was focused on my divorce. And people didn't really care as much. And there were some people who honestly felt like maybe it would make me better at this job to be a little bit at a sandwich generation point, because so many of my constituents were juggling family, caring for a parent and a child or children. People, it turns out, don't want elected officials who have perfect lives. They want elected officials who will help make their lives better. And I had a lot of personal motivation to be able to do that. I had one particularly pivotal moment where a group of my girlfriends took me out and sat me down and said, "We will have your back if you do this. We will make sure that you have the support to be a great mom and a candidate. You are going to hate yourself forever if you don't do this." I also listened to country music, and there was this moment where there's a song, "If you get the chance to sit it out or dance, I hope you dance." And I was listening to that song being like, I am sitting it out right now. So I was worried for the rest of my life I would regret not taking the chance and betting on myself. And so I decided to do it.
That's incredible. That I can imagine a group of women gathering together and being like, "You got to do this. We've got you." And I have felt that support from my friends, and it just feels like when you know you have that team of women around you, anything seems possible. So when you ran, what was it like running with a with a baby, and then starting your job um, as a new mom, a new single mom?
I had so many moments where people gave me so much grace. In some ways, when you're a new mom, it breaks down barriers really quickly. So I'd be calling people being like, "I need you to bet on me to be the next mayor of Phoenix." And then my child would be crying in the background. And at the time, I was like, no one is going to trust me to run a city if I can't quiet a baby. But it turns out there's a whole lot of parents out there who have also not been able to quiet a baby every second they would like to. And people, I think, were willing to judge me based on my record on the city council and look a little bit past my immediate circumstances. And then I think they also were hopeful that, I would pay it forward for working families once I got elected. I do feel like the city sort of supported me on my journey to be mayor, and now I owe it to the city to make sure other people can move forward and make great progress in their dreams, even while they have bumps along the way. So hopefully the tough points in my life will make me a better mayor.
I truly believe, and I'm saying this about myself and also my female colleagues and friends, that no one is more efficient than a new mom. Because there's something about knowing you have a certain amount of time before the baby wakes up from the nap. You have a certain amount of time when you're at work, and then you're going to have a rush home. So it really drives, at least for me, really drove hyper efficiency and also focus. How is your perspective as being the ultimate part of that sandwich generation, your mom, your baby? How did that change your mission as a mayor?
So I was a mayor early on in the COVID pandemic, which was like a lot of juggling. There was maybe one of my hardest day ever was in March. It was the day oil went below zero. My mom had been really sick and been hospitalized, but they just decided to put her in a COVID ward because she had been coughing, and we didn't think she had COVID, so we were freaking out. And then there was heightened scrutiny on what the city was doing, and people online were threatening. They posted online they were going to go protest at the mayor's mansion, which was a little comforting because we don't have a mayor's mansion in the city of Phoenix. So I feel like, okay, maybe they don't know exactly where they're going. And then my kid got sick and is throwing up all over everything. And it was just the juggle is real. But I'm still standing.
You're still standing, and you've accomplished so much. I want to talk about the way you've made Phoenix such a tech hub, a tech leader. But do you feel like, and you mentioned sort of the idea that you were relatable to your constituents because you're in the sandwich generation. Do you feel like your vision for the city and what you've been trying to accomplish in your multiple terms as mayor has been shaped by your perspective as both a mom, a working mom, and also a daughter trying to help out?
It absolutely has been. Each city has its own, I think, unique feel. And Phoenix, people often say in New York, your career is really defining for you. In some cities, maybe it's how much money you're making, or in DC, maybe your connection to politics is defining. In Phoenix, it's very much the whole person. We're very serious about family time and making sure you get recreation. Many people who visit us have seen our incredible mountain parks and the great outdoors. So we have a lot of people who really care passionately about their careers, but also we're definitely a city that's a great one to raise kids in and to enjoy whatever your hobbies are. And I think I've really tried to make sure we have jobs and opportunities where you don't have to be working 10 shifts to succeed. We're also a city that still very much remembers the 2008 real estate downturn. So I bought my first home in the single month peak of the 2008 market and never built equity. It's sort of funny to be on CNBC because that was not a great investment. But that, like going through having so many friends losing their homes, having just huge stress over finances, really motivated me to try to build a more diverse economy that wasn't so linked to one sector, real estate. So I've made big bets in areas like semiconductors. Right now, TSMC is investing $165 billion in the city of Phoenix. You've seen so many big AI deals announced, but often one of the things they have in common is those chips will be made in Phoenix. So we hope we're future-proofing. I've also really tried to build our healthcare and bioscience industry. At the end of my mom's cancer diagnosis, she was asked to get treatment or recommended that she go out of state. And I've tried to make sure that for future families, you get to stay home with your dog and your grandkid and get that treatment here on my terrible day in March, right? Like she was in a hospital in Houston, and so there was so much less I could do to support her. So we have now attracted multiple graduate medical programs. We're building actually a new medical school that will link engineering and healthcare. So hopefully the cures of the future that might involve advanced tech, we can also help contribute and develop. So again, like really tough times in my personal life with my mom's diagnosis and my mortgage, but I've tried to learn from those and help build a more resilient city. And it's neat how we're changing what's happening in the city of Phoenix and the opportunity.
Yeah, and it's just incredible how much you've been able to use your own perspective as a force to drive positive change. I want to hear a little bit more about how you made Phoenix the ultimate high-tech city to attract $165 billion from TSMC. I mean, we featured it on the Changemakers list, not because we had any other mayors on the list, or because that was even the kind of thing we would feature, but because you are really a force in business. And what you've done in Phoenix is make Phoenix a business hub unlike any other. How did you get these chip deals? How did you convince these chip companies that they should come build in the desert?
A lot of big city makers are lawyers or police officers. I had mentioned I got the MBA and I was working in economic development. That was a very good background for recruiting this big chip deal. Early on in my career, I had played a tiny moment in Intel's expansion in Arizona, so had some familiarity with the industry. Chips, they need to be, the equipment is incredibly expensive, right? A single tool could cost $400 million. They want to be up and running constantly, so they need reliable business conditions. Phoenix is very regularly sunny, more than 300 days a year. We don't have some of the challenges with major earthquakes, or we're not in Tornado Alley, so the reliable business conditions helped. We did have a strong semiconductor industry to begin with, so we weren't starting at zero. We were very strategic about where we wanted to focus our energy, and we took a sector where we already had great expertise. My educational partners here are incredible. ASU, Arizona State University, has been named the #1 most innovative college. They now have the largest engineering program. They're also willing to work with companies to develop model fabrication facilities so the students can learn on real equipment and hit the ground running. Some of these pieces of equipment are so incredibly advanced, right? We're talking 3 nanometers, and a human hair is enormous compared to the precision of these semiconductors. So the training has to be really advanced. So I think our educational partners really mattered. And the fact that it would be a real priority for us, that we would try to do what we can to design supplier campuses so their business partners could be close by, along with R&D facilities. Like, we'd really be willing to think about how we can build a city so advanced technology can succeed. We are lucky in that we did have available land where we could really design an advanced tech campus at scale, which is different than some of my other peer cities. Phoenix is geographically large, and so that's given us an advantage.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to see how not only did you get this $165 billion investment, but that's really spawned this ecosystem. And you're now supporting this huge ecosystem, so many jobs surrounding not just those working at those TSMC factories, but also in this whole world around it, and how you're making all these things fit together, whether it's the healthcare piece or also sustainability. All of these different pieces are interconnected, and it to me all adds up to Phoenix being a really modern, future forward, you called it future proof city. Was it hard to get those deals done? Were you questioned or challenged about your ability to make these totally unprecedented things happen?
I think we were nervous when we went into pitch. TSMC gave us half an hour. The land we were pitching was right next to a shooting range, and there's literally tumbleweeds in the area. We were not sure how that would play in Taiwan. We also, my economic development director and I are both women, and we were not sure if that would be an issue or not. We should not have been worried in any way, right? The leader of the country is a woman, and I don't think it was an issue at all. But we know we're holding people's economic futures in our hand. Our ability to make a deal will change people's lives and the city's lives forever. So you really want to be on your A game. My weird background came in handy, like being able to talk about electric transmission and the water utility in a more technical way was very useful. So some of it was, you can't plan your life around this one deal pitch, but sometimes your experience does prepare you in a really useful way. And it was absolutely a team effort. Our school districts invested in Mandarin language. Our state government was a partner with us. The national government was a partner with us. None of this happens without an incredible team.
But it sounds like a very stressful 30-minute meeting.
Well, they ended up giving us an hour and a half. So the meeting went really well. And we had a lot to say. But I definitely had growing pains, right? It was my first international trip as mayor. We had a dinner while we were in Taiwan, and they have these large tent tops with like a bunch of different courses at once, and they kept bringing out courses, and no one was eating. And then I had to have someone tell me that they were waiting for me to take the first bite and that no one would eat until I did. Right? I'm a new mayor. Like, I was not expecting everyone to be waiting for me to take a first bite. So I definitely had some growing pains along the way. But luckily, my poor manners did not totally destroy the deal, and we were able to still get it done. But there's a lot of moments where we laugh. My birthday happened on that trip as well, and our hosts got me extra frosting because they heard Americans really like sugar. So my kid went. That is true. My kid will sometimes just eat the frosting off a cupcake, so he would have been in heaven with the ratio of frosting to cake on this trip. They tried so hard to be good partners and accommodating. The hospitality was incredible.
So you said there are these moments when you laugh, and I have to ask, do you get nervous? I've heard that you're an introvert, and I've interviewed other female leaders who are introverts and have figured out how to use those skills that introverts are more likely to have to work for them. But it's also hard. And you have such a public role. Are you an introvert?
So I think I've definitely grown more extroverted throughout the job. But yes, particularly when I was starting the campaign, when you go into a room where you know literally no one and you have to make a good first impression quickly, like that is not easy for me. I have maybe compensated by trying to do preparation ahead of time to make sure I at least know a few people, and then I come in prepared and they can introduce me, and then I can hit the ground with more momentum. So I do think by compensating for being an introvert, like it maybe makes me more effective in the long term because I know I gotta come in and be better prepared. Like Bill Clinton, you could just drop him in and he'd talk to everyone immediately. But I want to come in and be like, okay, who's going to be there and how can I help them? And I think some of that compensation has been helpful in the long run.
Some female CEOs who are introverts have told me that they think it can be a superpower because it makes them better listeners because they're not anxious to jump in and get a word in edgewise. How do you think being an introvert has been an advantage to you other than getting you to do more prep work ahead of time? Do you think it makes you a better listener?
I do think it makes me a better listener. I also think I'm willing to be part of a team and I don't always have to be at the forefront. A deal like TSMC requires every level of government to get it done. And if I don't always have to be at the forefront, maybe as part of a team, we can be more successful. I often find when I'm out in front being like trying to get credit for everything, I'm not at my best, but when I can do it with my colleagues, I am much more successful. You know, we often talk about if you want to go far, you go with a group. And that has definitely been a benefit of being an introvert.
When I was with you in Arizona, you were talking about all that activities you have to do on the weekends and how as a mayor, it's different than being a senator or a congressperson in that you're really part of the community. And I guess it hadn't occurred to me how much you're sort of always on the clock, right? You can't go to the grocery store in Phoenix without people recognizing you. Give us a sense of what that's like.
So you have to be really organized because if someone at the grocery store tells you something that you need to follow up on, like you can't just hope you remember it later. They expect you to be able to help solve whatever is their problem. And so I got to be really disciplined. For me, that means writing it down right away and making sure I have a system to follow up. But it also means you get good ideas because you're out in the community and people can make suggestions to you. Sometimes feel like I get to crowdsource great ideas from the entire city, and that makes you a better leader, right? I'm not going to come up with every idea on my own, but being out in the community, people can tell you what they're thinking, and if you're organized enough to follow up, you can really make it a better city.
But does it mean that you never get a break?
It does mean you are always on to a certain level. I do sometimes go grocery shopping in a baseball hat and sunglasses, which is just trying to, like, particularly if you're sick, I'm like, please don't notice me.
So how do you protect your time, especially with your son? How old is he now?
So he is 8 years old, and he definitely demands his own fair share of time. He is not a fan of my cell phone. And so he will be like, okay, you got to put that away. And we do try to really spend time where it's just the two of us. He gets to go to some events that he would rather not, but it's never the same quality time when I'm working. And I do say people are very respectful when I am in mom mode, and people really do try to support him in our relationship. So that's been neat.
Do you have any rituals or life hacks that have helped you compartmentalize or put up those boundaries between the mom time and the work time, or even just juggle it all? You have an enormous job.
So I try to be really disciplined about exercising in the morning before he gets up. I will watch the evening news from the night before. If you watch it in the morning, you don't have to watch the commercials. And that helps me stay on top of the news, right? That's essential in my job. And then get some exercise done. People, I think, call it habit bundling.
That's what Ariana Huffington does. That's how she makes sure she exercises. She watches her favorite shows while exercising.
Right. Like I spent $250 on a little like bike at home, but it like means I can be close to my son and he's still safe and not alone and get the exercise done. He is not a morning person, so he's very unlikely to wake up early while I'm getting my exercise. And it's just nice to do something physical and get your heart going. And that release, I think, is also very helpful to me.
Any other things that you would recommend that other working moms know about or could do? Because just thinking about whether the constituents that you're working with or the other constituents that you have to deal with, that are the businesses and the universities, how do you keep it all straight? You write everything down. You get exercise in the morning. Do you get a lot of sleep?
I do find if I sleep well, I perform at such a higher level. Like to me, that really does need to be a priority. I got an Aura ring, which has been very
I have one too.
helpful to me. And it's one of the things I've learned from that is I'm super sensitive to caffeine. So really, like, if I have caffeine, I won't sleep as well that night. And that data and learning about my own health helps me make decisions that get better sleep. My bedroom is now like a dark cave because I also found out if have light around, that does impact my sleep. But I feel like I remember people's names better. I remember all the details better if I've gotten a good night's sleep. So it's a priority.
Yeah, you should listen to the podcast we did with Ariana Huffington. She talks about this a lot as well. And I'm trying. My Aura ring is keep me on track. One thing that I think is interesting about your job right now is that mayors, it feels like more than ever before, are in the national spotlight. Your job is not just about speaking to a city. Everyone's watching. How do you feel about the idea that mayors are now national political figures?
I feel like at least in Phoenix's case, we're often the good news branch of government. We can get things done pretty quickly. So we want to build a new educational program. We can get it started within the budget period. You know, if we want to do something innovative in transportation or the water supply, we can get that done. I feel like so many startups now come to us with their super cool ideas and we can implement much more quickly than other branches of government. So we have now AI that can stop a traffic signal if someone trips in the roadway. Like, we can get a cool idea and implement it to save lives. And I love that. It is certainly a complicated political time, but for us in Phoenix, I think we've picked issues that are pretty unifying. High-wage jobs, generally popular across all party lines. And so that's helped us continue the momentum.
In terms of these complicated political times, it seems like everything's so charged right now. Things are polarized and fragmented. How do you stay above the fray or avoid getting stuck in partisan vitriol? I mean, it sounds like you really want to speak to your constituents on both sides of the aisle.
Well, I hope some of the priorities can still bring people together, right? I'm working to make sure the Path to End Cancer goes through the city of Phoenix. So many people across the political spectrum have been impacted by a tough diagnosis. And so maybe those are the moments where we can still bring people together and get things done. But there are emotional issues all the time that cross our plate. And I stick with my values, what I believe in, and try to lead from that perspective. But listen to people. I try to have a meal at least once a month with someone with a very different political perspective than mine, and I always learn something.
You must have to be very careful about what you say to make sure your words aren't misinterpreted.
I give enough speeches that if you want a quotation where I sound like an idiot or say something that does not age well, they are out there. So I think it's more important just to live according to your values and try to be authentic. But if you want to find a quotation of something I've said that's not ideal, you can do it.
It sounds like you're very good at staying centered on what you believe in. Before we leave, I have to ask you about Waymo, because you mentioned all this new AI tech that you're implementing in the city. But you have really been a leader with driverless cars. We have Waymos here in LA. I love Waymo. I'm so incredibly impressed every time I get in one. But you decided, again, these are controversial. Some people are terrified of them. Some people hate seeing these driverless cars move around their city. You decided you really wanted to lean in here. Why, and how's it going?
So that is an issue that has even divided my own household. My dad is not a fan of Waymo. For us, we have had a pretty chronic shortage of drivers. So we've had a hard time getting long-haul truckers in this market. We had a hard time getting solid waste equipment operators to pick up the trash. Like, there was a real workforce need in this area. So from a workforce perspective, having some autonomous vehicles made sense. I do also really like the innovation. We are the largest autonomous vehicle zone in the world. Phoenix Sky Harbor, which the city of Phoenix operates, is the first it's the first airport, period, to have robotaxi service, autonomous vehicles. So you can go from downtown Phoenix to the airport in an autonomous vehicle. That was a real risk. We did a lot of testing and we made sure we did it safely. But to be the mayor to go first, you don't know, right? One-way streets, people who are running late, a lot of people who are not familiar with the driving environment. We were definitely nervous. It's always easiest to be the mayor who goes third because someone else works out all the kinks. But if you want to build the city of the future, you got to go first. In our case, investing in technology has really paid off, and we feel like people get a great transportation experience. You get in late at night and there's no one available to drive. You have a safe way to get where you're going. If your immune system is compromised, maybe you don't want to be in the car with another driver. So there's just a bunch of benefits that we have found, and we think it's been good for us to be on the forefront of a technology that people can choose to use if they want. And if you're like my dad and you want your hands on that wheel yourself, that is still a great option.
It's amazing how it seems like so many issues could be polarizing, even this question of technology. Just a final question before we let you go about your day running the city of Phoenix. You've mentioned your values and your goals as a mayor so many times. Where do your values come from? It sounds like you want to help people. You want to help people in the sandwich generation on either side of it. But how would you explain what your values are and the source of them?
I would say my North Star is, can I make people's lives better? Part of that really does come from how many people have helped me get where I am. I also want to be able to restore people's faith in government. We can do big things together. Building that semiconductor ecosystem or what we're doing in bioscience required business to collaborate with universities, nonprofits, and government. We as a community came together, set a vision, and achieved it. I'm a little concerned that people growing up today may not see government as an important player in getting things done. And I hope the Phoenix story is an example that communities can all be better off when we work together and go in the same direction.
That's awesome. Such a positive, uplifting message. Mayor Gallego, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much.